So with all our parts made, let's stuff and sew up Alice the zebra. So as you've gone along, you've used your contrasting piece of yarn in order to mark your round ends. You can now remove all of those, and you should be able to just simply pull on one end and they come out of the fabric without leaving a line or any mark on your work. So remove all of those. That's one less thread end to worry about. Then when it comes to using the stuffing, I'm using a recycled polyester stuffing. And the important thing really is to choose the stuffing that suits what your animal is going to be used for. So I'm intending Alice, this Alice, to be for, say, a baby or a child. So it will be played with, might need a little bit of washing. Going for a polyester stuffing will be the best choice. But you have got lots of options available, including pure wool and a plant-based option too. So when you're stuffing the parts, make sure that you push the stuffing down so it's just effectively in the hoof or the bottom of the leg, and use the end of your hook. So put the stuffing in like that and use the end of the hook to push that down and in. And when it comes to stuffing a larger piece, like the body and head, the big tip from me is don't be tempted to pull up small pieces of the stuffing and roll them up before you push them in. Try and actually keep the stuffing in one piece as much as possible. This will mean that your animal won't feel as lumpy at the end. So keep the stuffing in a big piece like that and push that in and through into your head. Once it's in, just manipulate that a little bit. So you will need to move it round inside your head to make sure it's in the right place and it feels not lumpy. A bit more into the front. So that's our head. And then the last piece, the body. And when we put the marker into our body, that becomes the front and centre of the tummy. So leave that marker in. That's going to help us make sure that all our pieces are centralised as we sew it together. We'll remove that at the very end. Then you'll need your strong wool needle, which we'll find, if you've gone for a complete kit, you'll find that is stickered just to the inside is where you'll find that. And I would always recommend a metal needle so you've got the strength to really pull this tight as we sew it together. So when sewing the pieces together on a standard Edwards Menagerie animal, I would always recommend doing it in the order that I'm going to do here. So first I'm going to start with my body and I'm going to gather the stitches on the top of the body. So what you've got in your final round is you've got your final V's of stitches. All you need to do is a running stitch in and out through those. And then pull that tight to close it off. And remember that when making each piece, I recommended to leave a long length onto them so you don't need to rejoin a yarn to sew them up. So just make sure you've left yourself that long length of yarn on every piece. So do the same thing on the head, do the running stitch in and out of those stitches. And the heads always start from the back and are worked moving forward. So the final stitches that you gather will always be the front of the face. So make sure you get them nice and neat so that they reflect that 6 in a ring that we started with. Right, so let's sew the two pieces together. So taking your body, make sure that your centralizer marker is in the front and center, and then your head is going to fit on top of that like that. And how we attach them together, that will form the neck. So position your body and head together like that. And then sew a couple of stitches between the front of the body and the underneath of the head. Then flip that over and just make sure that we're nicely in line again between the head and the body. And then sew right the way around, putting stitches between the head and the body. Now with the zebra, it's really handy because you can actually use the colour changing as your guide. So I'm going in to these stitches here in the charcoal, and I'm actually going to sew them in to the stitches on the colour change line between the charcoal and the cream on the body. So I'm going to go right the way around like that. I've done the back. And when you need to secure an end, best thing to do is bring that in and through like that. Make sure that you're close to a stitch that's in the same colour on one like this. So obviously I'm sewing it with a charcoal thread. I'm going to head towards a charcoal stripe section, then just go around one stitch, back through and around another, and that means that that end is nicely secure and you can just snip that off afterwards. So that's our head attached to our body. Now let's sew on our legs, and we will always start with the front legs first, so the top ones that go into the neckline. So when it comes to your legs, what you need to do before you sew your legs into place is fold them flat. Obviously you have got that colour change jog at the back, but fold them flat like that and just sew between the 2 rounds that you finished on, so that you've got one set of stitches to sew in like that. So that's closed. Then when it comes to positioning our front legs, what you need to do, use your centralizer mark as your guide and make sure that that is sitting in the center of your head. Always come back to that. Imagine a straight line coming up the center of the head and down into the body. Then taking your leg, make sure that color change is to the back, and then position it here into the line between the head and the body. And what we're going to be aiming for is leaving approximately 3 to 4 stitches at the front between our 2 front legs. So come in and sew between the body head and the top leg. And once you've sewn one side, flip it over and do the other in the same way. And then repeat exactly the same thing on the other side. So next we're going to sew on the bottom legs, and these are the most important to make sure that your animal can sit up. So a classic standard Edwards Menagerie animal has this asymmetric pear-shaped body, and our marker marks the centre of the tummy. And this balances any weight that we're going to add onto the head when we add the ears and the manes, or even on the antlers of a different design. And what we'll be doing is, with the position that we sew these bottom legs in, we're ensuring that your animal will always sit up and self-support its head. So what we need to do is take your animal like that. So you've got your head and your body and your top legs in position. Turn it over and look at the circle that is the bottom of the body. Now imagine a line coming from the centre of the tummy like that. So a line coming from the centre of the head down that centralizer line and to there. And what you then need to do is divide that circle into thirds. So you've got a line here, you'd have a line here, and then a line there. And what you do is you need to sew those legs on those lines that form that third. So it's at a slight angle coming out from the centre. And what I'm going to do is once again put my colour change line to the back. So you've got my colour change jog there. I'm going to make sure that that's facing upwards so that when you look at the front of the zebra, you won't see that. That's all disguised in the back. And then sew that leg on in exactly the same way. And the angle of those legs guarantee that when you then sit up your animal once you've sewn it together, you can place its hands on its knees effectively and they will all sit up like that. So remove your centralizer, it's time for the fun bit. Let's put on the ears, the eyes and the mane. So all I've done is gone away and I've snipped off the ends because I'm now ready to complete the facial features. So with the ears, you've created 2 cream ears, and all you need to do is take the length that you've got on the end at the point, gather those stitches together, but you want to retain the point. So just gather those like that, but then sew back through so that you've got the thread at the bottom to be able to sew them on with. And then what I'm going to do is actually pinch them like that. So if you see how they're a teardrop shape, pinch them like that, and I'm going to put a stitch through the bottom, which will just hold them in more of a 3D shape rather than being flat. And then I'm going to position them into this cream line, either side of where my mane would go. So we're going to be working a mane at the end that goes through the middle. I'm going to sew those onto this cream line here. So you see you've got your first cream one there, second one, it's the third one that I'm going to sew those ears into. And I'm going to sew 3 stitches on that side And then in a very similar way to the way that we did with the legs, I'll go to the other one and I'll do 3 on that side as well. So I know that they're really firmly attached. And repeat the same thing on the other side. And now let's add the mane. So now we're going to use a really simple technique to add the mane on, and all we're going to be doing is working chains. So once you've got your ears in position, get your hook that you've been crocheting with throughout and your charcoal yarn. And what you're going to do, put your hook in and around a stitch like that between your ears, and we're going to chain 12 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. And then go back into the surface of your fabric approximately 2 stitches and 2 rows away from where you've come out. And what that means, that's just to really advise you on not putting them in too densely, because you don't want them to be into every stitch, or you'll find that it won't be soft, it'll become too firm. In terms of a feature, it'll also use lots of yarn. So instead you want to spread them out like that. Just go in approximately 2 stitches away and then go again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. And then go back in to the surface of the fabric. And all you're going to do is work down the back of the head, working lots of those chains in position until we've got a mane. So with your mane complete, all you then need to do is sew in those 2 ends where you started and finished. And I've gone all the way down to the base of the head and then back up again the other way. And now for our tails. And what you need to do is fold your remaining cream yarn into 30 centimetre length. So take about 30 centimetres like that and fold it over 4 times. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then what we're going to do is crochet this directly into our zebra. And this makes it really strong. It means that if you are making a zebra for a child or a baby and it's going to get carried around by its tail, it's always going to be so strong that there's no way it can ever come out. So put your hook in and around 2 stitches like that. So do you see I've got it into the back of my zebra. It might be a good idea to sit your zebra down just to check that you've got the tail in the right place and that you're happy with it. And I'm going into the cream stripe there. Then with your yarn that you've got folded over, I'm going to put my hook through the 2 loops that I've got there. So you see I've got my 2 loops, through the 2 loops like that, and bring that through. And then I'm going to chain 8 big stitches using all of that yarn together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. And then what you've got is you've got a little loop that's left there. Now to make this as neat as possible and to avoid you having to doing any sewing up, all I would do is take your hook, put it through that last loop like that, and then just chain 1 more time like that. Cut that off because you can sew that in afterwards, and we're going to sew that down that tail and back in at the bottom. And then we're going to do 3 chain 15 loops on the end in our charcoal. So take your yarn like that and then chain onto the end. So go back in to those loops, slip stitch in and go again. Back in again, and then break the yarn and sew in all those ends to give yourself a neat finish. So what I would do is with my small cream one that I had left from that, I'm actually going to use my hook and just tuck it in a few times because it is really firmly attached already. So I'm just going to tuck it into a few stitches and then I can snip that off. Then with my longer cream one, which was where I broke the yarn, I'm going to sew that back down that tail and into the body. Like that. and then I'll sew in my charcoal ones in the same way that I have done before. So the final finishing touch is adding the eyes. And the best thing to get the nicest character on Alice the zebra is to make sure that we can see these eyes. So I've crocheted in charcoal as my main colour with cream in contrast. I'm going to use a black thread to sew on the eyes, and where I'm going to put them will be in this cream band here so that we can see them. So bring in your yarn like that, and then sew down in a straight line. So 1 and 2 wraps, then across to the other side, and 1 and 2 wraps, snip off that end, and with that, Alice the zebra is complete.